All right, the next part of this video is going to be encompassing both sanding out the planer lines and also laying out the cut marks for the semicircle, the mortise, and also the dado. So the first thing we're going to do is discuss getting rid of the planer lines. So what are planer lines? If you look at this board, there are lines, and we'll zoom in here a little bit. There we go. If you look here, there are lines like this dark mark here or this dark mark here. There are lines that come across this like this, and they're all the way down. And as you can see, if you look right here, there's dark marks, and they kind of look like almost like Ruffles potato chips. And if you look at those, what that is that's the knives passing over the that's the knives from the planer passing over the board. So what you want to do is get rid of those. If when you go to put a clear coat or a finish or stain on these, if those lines are still in there, you have to remember polyurethane and lacquer, they magnify the beauty of the wood, but they also magnify imperfections in the wood. So from the planer passing over these, it left little marks in there. They look like road bumps on the side of 79 with the rumble strips or a Ruffles potato chip. So what you want to do is you want to take a piece of 80 grit sandpaper. So how do you know it's 80 grit? Well, let's zoom back out here. There we go. If you look at this piece of sandpaper, on the back side of the sandpaper, it will actually tell you what grit it is. So this says P80, okay? This is 80 grit sandpaper. If you grab a different piece of sandpaper that's not 80 grit, let's go with this one here. If you look at the back side of this one, this is 220 grit, and then there's usually one in between that. There's a lot in between that, but common is 80, 120, 220. So the first thing that the 80 grit sandpaper does is it gets rid of these Ruffles potato chip lines that are going like this throughout your board. Then the 120 grit sandpaper, that actually takes your board and it sands out any scratches that the 80 grit put in. You have to remember, the 80 grit is very coarse, it's very rough. And the 220 grit, that's the last piece that you would use, that actually takes and smooths your board so it's ready for a finish. You wouldn't want to use 220 grit until right before you're ready to apply a finish. But 80 grit can be used at any time because the planer marks, once gone, are not going to come back. But if you sand this very, 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 very smooth with 220 after you're done with the 80 and the 120, what's going to end up happening is this wood over time, if you don't put a finish on it, is going to expand and contract, and it's going to get rough again because it's going to suck in the moisture. So the way you get rid of those planer lines, you take your 80 grit sandpaper, you put it, I like to put it on a sanding block like this, which is just a scrap piece of wood that I cut on the bandsaw, and I wrap my 80 grit around it, and I hold it with one hand, sand with the grain. Now that gets rid of the lines. If you can see over here, the Ruffles potato chip look is still there. Where I just sanded over here, those lines are almost all gone. Once you do that throughout the whole surface on the top and on the bottom, then you move over to 120 grit sandpaper. So you grab a piece of 120 grit or a piece of 100 grit. This here's a piece of 100. You wrap that around your sanding block, and I don't know if you can see it real well, but let's see if we can zoom in to tell. But if you look right here, let me see if we can get a better look at it. There are actually scratches in there from the 80 grit sandpaper. So what you're trying to do is to get rid of those. So we're going to zoom back out. We're going to take this here, wrap your 100 grit around there, and that 100 grit is to get the scratches that the 80 put in. So we're going to hold it. There we go. Now, obviously, I'm doing this to show you the distinct difference between sanding and not sanding. Many kids don't like to sand, it aggravates them. But if you don't sand later on down the road, your project isn't going to look very good. Then the last grit, and this you would use right before you're ready to put a finish on, is your 220 grit sandpaper. And you take this, you wrap it around your sanding block, and that's going to make it extremely smooth. You can hear the difference probably from when I was using 80 grit to now where I'm using 220 grit. The 220 grit, all it's doing is making it makes it completely smooth, so it looks good when you put a finish on it. And you can tell, even just by looking at the camera right now, the area that I sanded. So then, just to show you that that's not dust, if you take a rag and wipe that off, you can still see the difference from the area where I sanded here to where I didn't sand, which where the Ruffles potato chip look is, and you can really tell over in here. So what you did is just smooth that grain out so that it looks better when you go to put a finish on. Once you sand everything, it's time to start laying out all of your cuts. So you have 3 different cuts that we're going to work on. The first cut is, whoops, there we go. The first cut is your semicircle. The second cut is this cut up here, which is your mortise. And then your last cut is the dado that you're going to cut in here to accept your leg. So let's start with the semicircle. So in order to lay out your semicircles, those get laid out on the legs, and you'll go like this here. You'll take your legs, you make sure that the grain is facing up and down. You drop that down like this. You take your dividers, which you're going to need, so you get those out of the tool cupboard. You grab a square, and you're going to need a pencil. Then what you're going to do is you're going to mark the middle of your board. So the overall length or the width of this board is 8 inches. So you're going to mark it at 4. You're going to go halfway. So you take your roller, you put it on a whole number, which right here, and you mark it at 4 inches. So if you can see, all I did was put a little mark down there at 4 inches. It's right there. Okay? Once you do that, you're going to open your caliper or your dividers up to 2 1/4 inch, because the overall diameter of the circle or the semicircle is 4 1/2. So we open that to 2 1/4. We dig this tip into the board here. We take these and we give yourself a circle right around. Now, depending on what wood you're using, this one you can relatively see pretty clear from the line all the way across, but if you're using a different wood, maybe it won't give you that, so just take your pencil and give yourself a little bit more distinct line. So when you're at the bandsaw, you can see where you're cutting. The other thing you want to do is lay out some relief cuts. What these relief cuts do is it allows for when you cut in here with the bandsaw that this piece falls out. When you get to this part, this piece falls out. So you're going to do some relief cuts in here. Okay, then the next thing we need to lay out up here is your mortise. Your mortise is also starts at 4 inches. So you take your roller, you put it here, you mark it at 4 inches. Now the mortise is 3/4 of an inch overall in its width this way. So I need to go half of 3/4. So how do you figure out half of a fraction? Double your bottom number. So half of 3/4, if you double the bottom number, is 3/8. So we're going to go 3/8 to the left. So you count 1, 2, 3/8 to the left, 1, 2, 3/8 to the right. The overall depth of our mortise, that means from the top of the leg down, is 1 1/4. So you take this, you mark this at 1 1/4, like so. Now you have a mark at 1 1/4. You have a mark in the middle at 4, which you don't need. The only reason you needed that is so that you could measure 3/8 to the left and 3/8 to the right. Now you're going to take your square and you're going to draw. You're going to take this here, you're going to mark this here, and you're going to go like this. Then you're going to go like this here and bring your 2 3/8 marks down. I'm trying to draw it dark for you so that you can see it. Now you have a mortise lined up. You have your semicircle down here, you have your mortise there. Now this gets cut out on the bandsaw. So the first thing you're going to do, you're going to make a straight cut down this side. So this is going to be cut 1. This is your second cut, straight down, leaving the pencil line. This is cut 2. Then you're going to go corner to corner on the bandsaw. This is going to be cut 3. Then you're going to cut from here, because what happens is this piece then falls out. So this triangle right here falls out. And then cut 4 is going to be from here to here. This is cut 4. And then cut 5, you're going to use the front end of the bandsaw as a sander, and you're going to work it back and forth to get rid of that. So let's go over these real quick. You have right here, you have, let's zoom in so you can see. You have cut 1, which is coming straight down. Cut 2, straight down. Cut 3 is from corner to corner. Cut 4 goes from here to here. And then cut 5, you're going to use the front end of the bandsaw as a sander, and you're going to get rid of this little mountain peak in the middle, and I'll show you how to do that. The other layout that you need to do is going to be on the bottom of your footstool, on the seat of it. So we are going to cut those dados in there that we talked about. And a dado is a cut that doesn't go completely through the board. So this cut here that you see on the footstool where my pencil is, that's called a dado, because we didn't cut from the bottom to the top and cut all the way through. We only cut a portion of the way through, so it gave the it gave the leg an actual seat to sit inside of. So let's see if we can get zoomed in on it. There you go. So you're going to be able to cut this dado in here. So now we're going to lay out for that dado. To do that, we're going to rezoom your camera in. There we go. To do that, what we're going to do, we're going to measure 5/8 of an inch from both sides. So 5/8 from here over and 5/8 from here over. So we're going to count 5/8 of an inch. We're going to put a mark from the left side and 5/8 from this side. We're going to put a mark. Now, in order to accept the leg, we planed these legs on the footstool to 3/4 of an inch. So now we need to measure over 3/4 of an inch from the 5/8 mark. So we take our roller, we measure 3/4 of an inch. Do the same thing on this side, 3/4 of an inch. Now we're going to open up our combination square. So to open up your combination square, you loosen this. You open this up, make sure that your entire roller is still in the saddle. So you don't want to pull this all the way through like that and then tighten it, because it'll actually pull your roller out of square. So you're going to push this in like this so that a little bit is entirely in the saddle of the square. You're going to tighten this up, and then you're going to project your lines across. So ride your square along the flat edge of your board. You're going to mark your 5/8 line straight across. You're going to mark your 3/4 inch line straight across, and then the same thing over here. There you go. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this over, and we're going to cut this, and we're going to cut this out on the radial arm saw. So let's go, and we'll start that on the next video.